Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Reality Show, brought to you by the Ayn Rand Center UK, where you get your daily dose of reality right here from an objectivist perspective, which to me is as close to reality as it gets. Today, we've got three topics we are going to talk about, all of which are very interesting. A couple of them frightening, and I'm definitely very anxious to get the perspectives of our esteemed panel here on these three topics. The first one is with respect to the trial of Lucy Letby, which has been ongoing in recent months there in the UK. She was a nurse who killed numerous babies in a hospital in Chester. This is disturbing. So it has emerged that she was only suspended after years after the concerns were raised about her, during which time she killed and attacked numerous other babies. The hospital executives seem to have evaded this reality. You know how evasion stands on our hierarchy of values. And we're going to talk about this. What do you guys think about this? You out there in the world of objectivism. There is also a contentious plan to overhaul the Israeli judicial system. What do you guys make of these plans? I'm sure many of us in the United States are going to be sort of unfamiliar with the politics of Israel, so hopefully somebody will be able to bring us up to speed on that. And should frequent flyer schemes still exist during the climate crisis? Razi, apparently you're going to have some extremely intense perspectives on this. Joining me today is our esteemed panel, Marco and Richard. Razi, Ginsburg. What's up, guys? Are you ready to tackle these crazy, contentious issues or what?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Let's do it.
Good. So let's do it. Let's talk about this first case with this nurse in this hospital, supposedly killing children, and the executives of the hospital evading this fact for a long time. Now, what make you of this, and sort of fill in the audience on this case, since it's right there in your home turf.
Yeah. Well, it's a more than monstrous case of multiple murder of children. I mean, this woman had access to. She was a nurse, so she had access to drugs, and she had access to the kids, and she was able to perpetrate these murders, these awful, unspeakable things. Really, the thing that really grates is not the event itself, but it's the fact that in the last 50 or I can think of probably 40, 50 years, we've had so many enormous scandals and loss of lives. We had a scandal of thalidomide, by which the government, through the NHS, was provide medication which caused fetuses not to develop properly, so people would be born without properly functioning or properly developed limbs. Then in the 80s, we had the scandal of the HIV tainted blood, which was given as transfusion to people, so HIV was spread by the NHS. Then we had early 2000. We talked about it. We had the Shipman story, the Dr. Shipman who killed about, I think, 10, 13 people as well, generally elderly ladies. Then we had two cases of child abuse, child mistreatment, and the caring service, which were supposed to look after these kids, were totally found in contempt and total failure to protect the relation of duty. There was a case in 2000, Victoria Clambier, a little girl from Côte d'Ivoire. She was actually murdered by the people who were supposed to look after her. And then another awful thing where she was effectively seen by different people in the NHS and the civil and the social services, and she was failed. One person after the other, one care after the other, missed the fact that she was being abused. 13 years later, there was a famous case, Baby P, again in the same local authority area of London, where Victoria Clambier was murdered. A little kid, just over a year old, was subjected to all sorts of abuse by his parents. And again, doctors and social services failed to notice that the kid was actually being murdered, and he sadly died at age 16 months or something like that. And then again, bit later, we see this again happen through the NHS. And it's like, it's a litany of disaster one after the other.
And in this case of Lucy Letby, what she seems to have done is she's injected young newborns with insulin, with air, drowning them in excess milk, making sure that as soon as their parents had left, a lot of these things would occur. And one of the features of this case was that she was present at multiple deaths of newborns when there was a clear statistical link between who was on duty and when there was such a death across a period of multiple years. So I think one of the key problems is that here in the UK, the NHS is holy. To criticise it is to blaspheme, and a nurse is automatically good and caring in that way of looking at the world. And therefore, when somebody criticises it, they've got a blind spot, an infallibility blind spot, that means that they don't trust whistleblowers even within their own service who highlight some of the issues that are going on.
Now, it seems to me that one of the defenses for her was that the system itself had failed in a number of these cases that she happened to be present at. And some of these scandals happened here in the United States as well, with sort of that 50-50 semi-free system that we have. So how can you be assured? I mean, these are two separate questions. How can you be assured that a private system would be any better, a privatized system would be any better? And is there any play to the fact that some of these executives considered some of the deaths to be on the shoulders of the NHS, ambulance issues, other shortages and other problems, as opposed to her psychopathy? Razi, you have something to say about that?
Of course, somebody evil can work in a private healthcare system, but there's so I want to read a bit of the timeline. The Telegraph published a very good timeline on this. I want to read some of it. So July 2nd, 2015, and the dates here are important. So remember, July 2nd, 2015, Dr. Stephen Breary, head consultant of the neonatal unit, carries out a review of 3 unusual deaths in June 2015, so the previous month. Alison Kelly, the director of nursing and deputy chief executive, is told that Letby was the only nurse on shift for each. Okay, so he keeps warning about it in February 8th of 2016. This is 6-7 months later. A review ordered by Dr. Breary finds common links to in 9 deaths since June 2015, and so he's suspecting her. He requests a meeting with executives, but no meeting takes place until May 2016. Now, this is the kind of thing where you don't wait 3 months with a meeting over the deaths of babies. She, of course, continues. Then in June 24th, 2016. So this is like a year, just over a year after the first murders. Dr. Breary phones duty executive on call, Karen Reese, a senior nurse in the urgent care division, to say he and his consultant colleagues do not want Letby to work her next scheduled shift on June 25th, but she rejects the plea. So, and at this point, she had already murdered more babies. So again, evil people can work anywhere, but the way the NHS works, and yes, as Richard mentioned, it's holy. It is when we say that the NHS is like a religion in the UK, it really is, and that's why executives can get away with things that Catholic priests can get away with in the Catholic Church. I mean, when there's criticism of anything in the NHS, it's usually criticism of the government for not investing enough in the NHS. You don't actually criticize the NHS, and when a body that massive has zero accountability and unlimited funds and unlimited basically free range to do whatever they want, it will attract, and again, there are definitely good people, well-intentioned people working in the NHS, but it will attract the worst people as well. So this is not a coincidence.
Very, very interesting. Go ahead, Nathan.
This reminds me of the train crash in Atlas Shrugged. where people just don't take responsibility for their own work because of the bureaucracy and the regulations. I mean, I don't know anything about the story. I just read it today. And it's horrific. But I wouldn't be surprised if these governmental controls have given rise to situations like this. I mean, that timeline just sounds very conspicuous.
Yeah.
Well, folks,
sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just saying, one of the things that is clear here is how the NHS is run effectively by what are similar to politicians, and they use plausible deniability all the time and evasion and put off making decisions as long as they can possibly get away with it, and blame other departments within their own organization, anything to evade. And also the dislocation between the bureaucracy and the medical staff. And the fact that there's a sort of dichotomy where people are so focused on the paperwork and the key performance indicators and whether all of their statistics are showing green across their hospital trusts compared with other hospital trusts, instead of listening to doctors on the wards and actual medical opinion, which is the reality of medical care.
Yeah, if you speak to clinical people, they actually say they're frustrated by the bureaucracy, but the bureaucracy is the only thing that seems to increase. You get more and more paper pushers and fewer clinical staff, and that adds to the problem.
Yeah, we're having a similar problem here where doctors are actually opting out of the system because they're tired of insurance bureaucracies, government bureaucracies getting in the way of their treatment of the patient. So my doctors offer concierge medicine now, and when you go into them, you basically pay cash for services, and you could submit it to your insurance company later on, but they just do not want to deal with insurance companies getting in the way of their treatment. Well, this is what you get when you give over moral agency to the government, when you hand over one of the most fundamental and important aspects of your life, your medical care, to somebody else because you claim you deserve to be taken care of. Razi, you keep wanting to come in. What's up?
The fact that a doctor says, I don't want this person near babies, and the bureaucrat gets to overrule that tells you everything you need to know there. And yeah, it is very much like a train crash. Sorry for the spoiler for anybody who hasn't read Atlas Shrugged, but
there it is.
Sorry, with the added hideous irony that the doctors who complained about her were forced to apologize to her in writing for raising what was deemed at the time by the bureaucracy to be unvalid concerns. So, you know, it's an extra piece of bitterness to the whole thing.
The bureaucracy, in these situations, the bureaucracy becomes about defending itself, doesn't it? And perpetuating itself at the expense of services to other people. Its orientation is completely different than a privatized system, which actually is about giving the most cost-effective, most accessible services to people. When are you folks in the UK going to learn this? Well, you guys know it, but well, when are the rest of the people going to know it?
If you have to protect the NHS, they do. They protect themselves, the NHS.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's long been known as a you know, even in the satirical comedy series Yes Minister back in the 1980s, they would mock it. There was a particular program where they had a new hospital that had opened that had 500 administrators, no doctors, no nurses, no patients, been open for a whole year and was up for an award for having the best hygiene. So it's long been known as being a hopeless situation, which is only, and that to be honest, looking back, and that now looks like the heyday.
And the whole thing costs 150 billion pounds a year, which is about $200 billion, isn't it? And it's one of the largest public sector employer certainly in Europe. I think we are second to the Chinese army or something like that. I mean, what's the excuse for that? I can't figure it out.
Well, then that makes it much more difficult to get away from it because it's metastasized and it's now in the vital organs of the community. With so many people dependent on this bureaucracy for their living, good luck getting rid of it. Is there any hope?
No, not in the foreseeable future. Nathan mentioned protect the NHS. So this was a part of the slogan during the first lockdown. I don't remember how long the slogan was used, but it was stay home, save lives, protect the NHS. Was that the order? Am I getting it right? Which is
Unbelievable.
Shocking. Think about this. There's a pandemic, and you are being told that what you need to do is to protect the health service from you potentially having the disease. I mean, it's one of those things that it's just so shocking, but it wasn't questioned. It wasn't publicly questioned. There were no opposition politicians or pundits saying, hang on, what is that part of the slogan about the NHS? How does that make sense? And of course it doesn't. One other thing that I want to bring up, I don't, some people may have heard this already. This was like a decade ago. There's an article in The Guardian. I bring this up from time to time because I think it shows, it shows the way people think about the NHS here. So the headline is NHS comes top in healthcare survey. Study by Washington-based foundation puts healthcare provision in the U.S. at the bottom of its report. Now, we can put the link to the article somewhere, but so there was the one line that I'm now looking for. Actually, let me find it.
This is how these phony consensuses get drummed up on the internet, right? You get these statist poll takers that place the United States and relatively free countries at the bottom, these statist countries at the top. And then, when you're arguing with somebody online about how terrible these statist systems is, all they have to do is simply, do a light Google search and find survey after survey after survey about how great these systems are, how happy the people are.
Right, but the really shocking thing in the article is not that some left-wing think tank or whatever in the US found the NHS to be great, or that The Guardian is highlighting this because it fits their agenda. It's that somehow the following line made it through all the proofreading and editing of this article. All right. The only serious black mark against the NHS was its poor record on keeping people alive. This was an actual line in this article. Daniel, I'm going to send it to you. You can put the link in the chat and in the description. This wasn't somebody randomly talking and coming up with something stupid. This was an article in The Guardian, which I guarantee you goes through several rounds of editing, but nobody thinks about this because, we all know the NHS is great. That's a given. And then everything else fits into that. Or, there are things to fix, like, why are people dying for no reason? And people in the UK know this. I mean, you can, if you have a headache or something, or have a, something minor that you need to get taken care of, you go to the hospital and they'll treat you for it. If it's anything serious, if you have cancer, it depends where you are, but it's likely that you will die because you were born in the wrong part of the country where they're not prioritizing treatment for cancer. So yeah,
I have to know the context of that line, because just I can't imagine how someone would write that without thinking twice about.
I can. The left is not what I would call introspective. So sometimes they just let paradoxes like that fly without even thinking about it. I mean, there's tons of those kinds of paradoxes in the very next thing we're going to be talking about, with the things that Biden was saying to Netanyahu, sort of just cracking me up. Maybe I'm the only one getting that. Anyway, well, this is awful. How far have you fallen, Great Britain?
Just let me, if you want the context, I can give you. So this was the first line in a paragraph. The last line in the previous paragraph was: the fund also rated the NHS as the best for giving access to care for efficient use of resources. Then the only serious black mark against the NHS was the poor record on keeping people alive on a composite healthy lives score, which includes deaths among infants and patients who would have survived had they received timely and effective healthcare. The UK came 10th. This is 10th out of 11.
That's important, and somehow that's buried in there. But that's a very significant statistic. Wow. I mean, Britain went from the source of abolitionism, the font of natural rights, the Industrial Revolution, freedom and individualism, to this, and there's no getting away from it. You guys are heading down the The Atlas Shrugged train tunnel? Is that what's going to happen here?
Oh, we're headed first.
Yeah. We're following you. We're following you with smiles on our faces and martinis in our hands. Well, folks, that was frightening. Well, let's go to something else that's potentially frightening. I'm hoping, Razi, you'll be able to fill us in a little bit more as to some of the details of this. But there's been a plan to overhaul the justice system in Israel. I guess it was proposed by the Knesset and by a very conservative government of Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, listening just a little bit to Yaron Brook, he said this judicial system does need to be overhauled. Reading the article, standards of reasonableness does seem very subjective, and you guys don't have a written constitution, so it's not like the Supreme Court can refer to a written constitution and use that as a guide. But judicial overhaul seems to be necessary. But is this the right way to do it? Is it doing it right? Who wants to be the first to weigh in on this?
So I definitely can't shed more light, but Nathan can. So he can hopefully explain this to us in a way we'll understand. And then I have some comments about how the public discourse is going around that.
Okay, copy that. I mean, I just want to say from the start, like, I'm not an expert on this, and I haven't followed all the facts. And there are many nuances and technicalities and, discussions about law. But I think it's very interesting to look at this case from a philosophical perspective. So, Ayn Rand, she has in one of her articles, I don't remember which essay it is, but she wrote that in her time, people, they didn't want to make a decision. Do they want capitalism or do they want socialism? Do they want individualism or collectivism? And they're just not deciding. They just want the mixed economy. They want the gray. They want the the no absolutes, the pragmatism. They just want to stay in the middle. And she warns that this can't last forever. You'll have to make a decision. And I think that the universal kind of outtake and conclusions that we can take from Israel is that we are entering the stage of the welfare state, the end of the mixed economy, and we have to make a decision. I mean, I could be wrong on this, and this could go on for another 10 years, but at least from the kind of discourse in Israel and the way that things are heating up here, and the pot is boiling, and it feels like something is happening, something is changing. This is not just the same world that we grew up in, 10 years ago even. So I think even though this is not stated explicitly by any of the parties, I think this is really what's going on in Israel, that people are, they're just fed up being in the middle and they want to decide. And I think that the major ideas here that are being confronted is, one, rule by the people, and two, rule by the experts. So I think that's the basically what's going on from the most kind of abstract philosophical sense.
Sounds like a false dichotomy to me.
Very much. And by the way, feel free to interject. I mean, there's a lot to say here.
Well, can you give us, like, for people who don't know what's going on, can you give us basically what is the government proposing and what are people opposing from what's
right? And also quickly, I want to add to that. So in the United States, we have a concept called judicial review, which was established by Justice John Marshall early on in the workings of the Constitution. How is the reasonableness standard that the Supreme Court is using to overturn legislation different from judicial review? If you know anything about those differences, because I'd like to know.
So hold on. So should I just give a historical context a little bit?
Sure.
Okay, so I mean, this is not objective by any means. This is just off the top of my head. So I think what happened in Israel in the 80s, or a little bit prior to the 80s, the Likud party, the right wing, the kind of conservative side of the political system, they came into power for the first time. And, I don't think it would be conspiracy rhetorical for me to say it, but the left, they were searching for more areas in the culture can kind of dominate. So one of these areas was the judicial system, and in the early 90s, so a more context to the conversation. Israel does not have a constitution, as you said, Mark. What we do have is basic laws, which I am not an expert. I'm not sure exactly what their lawful status is. I don't think that technically they mean anything more than other laws, but the thing is that, so the judges, well, it wasn't the judges, but the one of the Supreme Court justices, he kind of prepared this law. He wrote it, and it's called the Basic Law. Wait, I have them here. So there were two laws that passed. One was the human dignity and liberty, and the other freedom of occupation. Now you can already hear that they're kind of mixed. In my opinion, they're very bad laws, even from a individual rights perspective, because they all have clauses like, okay, so here are your rights, your individual rights, but we can infringe them based on the values of Israel as a Jewish and democratic state. That's the clause. So basically, that's what the government does. If they want to pass some policy that infringes rights, so they just say, oh, this is our values as a Jewish and democratic state. And then the government and the courts do this. So they have no objective standard. They do not recognize rights. And so what happened is that the right got really angry over the years. This is very very common of the right to get angry. They're like, the left, they control everything. They're a bunch of elites. They control the culture, the media, the courts. Even though it's not true, the right has, if you're a right-wing citizen in Israel, you have many media outlets today that you can listen to, that you can read, but they still have this kind of victim mentality that they don't. But on the other hand, their criticisms of the court, they're legitimate. The court has no objective standards by which they rule, they educate. So what basically kind of culminated here is that the courts are arbitrary in their rulings, and the government is arbitrary, and just two parties, two tribal camps that are just fighting out, like, on power.
So basically what the government is trying to do in a very broad sense is weaken the court and strengthen the executive
parliament.
branch. Yeah, and
right.
parliament.
And notice the word weaken. That's very important. They use the concept weaken. They don't say limit.
Yeah.
They say weaken. So it's like the default. Okay, the default is they have absolute power, and they have absolute power. And now the question is, who is stronger? And then this is the conversation. And the underlying premises here is it's just a question of who rules. It's not what kind of rule do we want. It's not what is the standard by which we need to rule, and how should the government look like, and what should the courts, what they should rule. And I have many debates even with objectivists about this, and because the thing is, each side has plausible arguments. So different sides get kind of entrenched in either side. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Razi.
Yeah, so you're saying each side has plausible arguments, which I guess I agree with, although it doesn't come across. What comes across is, when I see, I definitely, I do not support this judicial reform. When I see the protests against, so there's protests every week, or is it more than that? It's all over the country, right? People are basically shouting, because what do you do in a protest? You formulate a well thought out argument, you shout, and people are shouting democracy, democracy. That is their slogan, which is ironic. So I was in Israel a few months ago, and I was at an event where there was a debate on this topic, and the person debating against the reform was Yaron Brook, and he was saying, well, this is actually more democratic, and that's the problem with it. This does give more power to the people, elected directly, rather than, and again, it's not saying, as Nathan said, it's not let's limit different branches of government from. It's saying, okay, there's too much power here. Let's put all the power here, and again, here would be in the hands of the people, so to speak. So
that's scary. That's scary.
And,
so the judiciary should be a limit on both the legislative, executive branches. It should be the philosophical wing of the government. So we want them to limit democracy, but by the same token, we don't want them arbitrarily striking down laws.
Yeah, I agree with that. I just wanted to say one more thing. So, one of the things that depressed me about political discourse is that so much is, people shouting down each other. And I believe, I'm getting word from our producer that we have exclusive footage, ARCUK exclusive footage, like we had of the riots in New York. We have exclusive footage of what happened in that debate with Yaron Brook and a member of Knesset who was pushing the reform. Yes, producer.
Oh, let's see it, Daniel.
All right. Well, I don't know if you can share it in. Well, never mind. It's not in full screen, but yeah. So this was okay. Do you want to share the other clip, and then we'll.
אנחנו מבקשים לקיים פה דיון, ואנחנו מחליפים עמדות ותפיסות עולם, ויש פה דיון עמוק.
So yeah, they're shouting shame, shame, like in that Game of Thrones episode, because of course that's you shout shame at somebody, you've won the argument. After this event, I was arguing with one of the protesters, and I said, you were shouting down your opponent. Basically, you were trying to silence the guy you disagreed with. And he said, no, we weren't silencing, we let the other guy speak. So yeah, this is political discourse in Israel at the moment. When we were talking about how we want to describe political discourse in the UK, we agreed not to use the word retarded on the channel anymore. So I don't know what word we will use, but
challenged.
I think
intellectually challenged.
I think we can say that if you're looking for a concretized picture of collectivism, there you have it.
There you have it, guys. What you saw, if you could see it in the little screen, I didn't see it in the big screen, was democracy in action. Isn't it fine? Isn't that something to aspire to? Hopefully it will be like an episode of Naked and Afraid, make you afraid of nature, untouched nature. As that does, this will make you afraid of untouched democracy, because that's what it winds up being, folks, a shouting match. We can't agree that judicial reform needs to happen. It just needs to be objective. It needs to be guided. Well, you guys have common law there, and Britain has no written constitution, and common law should guide the decisions that the justices are making. It can't be arbitrary. Reform has to happen, but it has to be more broad. Is that the conclusion you're going to draw?
Well, my kind of short range of the moment conclusion is, I'm against the overhaul. I think that it is much better to have a situation where you have two bodies fighting each other and kind of canceling out each other, even though sometimes it's right for the right reason, sometimes it's for the wrong reason, but at least you have that that dynamic of two parties canceling each other. And if the law does pass, then I think Israel enters into phase of just limited majority rule. Like, I'm not saying that it will become a dictatorship, like, you know, right after this passes, but I'm saying that the principle is there. Like, it would be out in the open. There's no law. It's just arbitrary majority rule, which is why personally I'm opposed to the overhaul.
I mean,
Marco and Rick, go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Historically, does the judiciary strike down laws more from the conservative rather than the other side, or?
I think so. So, I mean, look, they play with the data, with the statistics with this, you know, the left, they can do that all the time. But so the left has this one graph where it shows the judicial branch canceling maybe 10, even 10. But the thing is, I mean, that's disingenuous, because what they do is they cancel the laws before they even come up. So they just, you know, this law, it will not pass. So you just don't. So it's a lot more than that. But yeah, I mean, look, there's a problem, because like I said from the beginning, there's no standard of what kind of government do we want? What is the rule? And it's just a matter of, well, who rules? You know, who is the person that rules? It's not what is the content. There's no conversation of that. And then the judges, they judge kind of arbitrarily. You know, I don't want to say that about all judges, because that wouldn't be true. But when it comes to these big issues, these big ideas, you know, environmental issues, there was this one case where so there was I don't know, I guess it was an old lady or something that she didn't pay her electric bills, and then the electric company, they wanted to cut her off, so they went to court, and the judges said that the electricity company has to keep some electricity because she's you know, she's needy, and that would be the proper thing to do. So I mean, that shows you what kind of rules they have from their side.
All right. So what we can take from the first two of these subjects is the NHS sucks. It needs to be privatized. And we are for checks and balances, not for democracy. Folks, you should think about that, because our politicians talk about democracy as if it's the highest form of political institutions out there. And it really isn't. It's really quite a scary thing, as you could see in the posted video. Really quickly, we have a couple of super chats here. Ashley shrugged for $4.99. Thanks, Ashley. About to come out with a reality check t-shirt, by the way. So stay tuned for that. But the NHS is free, she says, like Medicaid here. It says, laughs in healthcare worker. Also, watch anyone in the hospital. Medical errors are a leading cause of death. I have heard of those nightmares where they pin the wrong leg or some organ to be taken out that's actually healthy. I'm assuming there are others that are far more frightening. Adherent of Lady Columbia, member for 1 month. Something I'm wondering if anyone else has noticed or not. I have noticed both sides are showing signs of fatigue, stagnate agitprop, and dispersion. Well, there is a thing going on here in the United States called the No Labels Party, which I think should be a subject for future discussion, Razi, because people are certainly worn out by the left and the right, by the Democrats and the Republicans here. I'm sure they're getting worn out over there. They see how facile the arguments are, but they just don't know what to do with it. For me, the No Labels Party is the pragmatist solution, the I'm going to be in the middle between these two vices solution, which I think is terrible, but it's gaining momentum here. What say you about this cynicism, this signs of fatigue? Do you see that?
I mean, looking at you know, two sets of bad ideas and saying, you know, the solution is no labels. I haven't heard of it until you mentioned it, but it sounds to me like, you know, you're kind of, you know, saying, okay, these are the solutions. You know, what they're offering, those two sides, that's what we have. So let's go for nothing. Yeah, I wouldn't choose no labels. I would choose the labels rationally, and yeah, that would be my.
Yes, indeed. Okay, well, folks, we have a third topic here. Should frequent flyer schemes still exist during the climate crisis. Now, I don't know about anybody else who read that article in The Independent, but I wanted to shoot myself multiple times. I wanted to do bad things, but because I'm a rational guy, I chose reason over my emotions. And so suffice it to say, the author will still exist in peace with me, even though I think she's a horrible human being. Does anybody want to talk about this? Because I personally am a huge fan of frequent flyer miles because I fly a lot and I get a lot of deals. And I think many of the people, even though they tried to make them seem like elitist slackers who are just flying to take up more miles and to get more benefits, which I think is great. Fly to Hawaii if you want, fly any way you want. Even though you're putting 15 metric tons of carbon in the atmosphere, how dare you? Her solution is, of course, to start penalizing people who fly a lot. I think that's terrible because the majority of people, of course, who are flying a lot are flying for business. It's not just pleasure. You fly a lot because you're working in other places, as I do. And to penalize that would be penalizing productive work. But I'm sure, Razi, I heard you have something to say about this.
So, Mark, I'm glad you decided to be reasonable about it, so I don't have to. Yeah, this really pissed me off. And the thing is, so I look at the frequent flyer forums and so on, and there's always this apologetic. People are apologetic about about enjoying something like this, and they're like, yeah, it's bad for the environment, but and then whatever, which means eventually these guys will win. And I know how this goes because I saw it when they came for my plastic bags and my plastic straws, and now they're coming for my miles. I'm really not happy about it. Frequent flyer programs, it's the airline's way of getting you to purchase their product like any business wants you to purchase their product. And it works. Yeah, I've taken flights just to get status in an airline, and it gives me benefits that I think are valuable to me. And this is the essence of the environmentalist movement is they want or the essence of what their goals is to have government prevent people from doing what they choose to do if there's some case to be made that it is environmentally not environmentally friendly. And there's always a case to be made by their standards. So, yeah, I'm
environmentalists are the new Calvinists. There will be no joy. Any joy you experience is to be snuffed out instantly. You are to worship at the altar of Gaia, or you are an evil person. Marco and Richard, what say you to this crazy article?
At least the Calvinists followed their own advice. These guys are just parasites, really. It's just parasitize on everybody else's life. I mean, this argument is so stupid. I don't even want to comment on it. What I comment about is this woman who wrote the article. She's been writing the same article for about 5 or 6 years, and of course, being the darlings of the media, she's been reported, especially on the rags like the Guardian, But I looked up the foundation she works for. It's called on the article Possible, the charity, but it's actually, if you look at the registry of charities, the government one, it's something called the 1010 Foundation. I don't know whether 1010 refers to the myopic view of life that they have, but I don't know. They have a massive budget. I think that the overall turnover is over £1.5 million, and the salary budget is about 800 grand, and they have the equivalent of 20 people on the book, so it's about 40 grand pounds per person. So these guys are not actually doing it for the good of the planet. They're actually feathering their own nest. They're part of a system which is so ingrained that allows these whackers to make lots of money by stopping Razi from flying around. And of course, these things are actually funded by bigger charities. For example, this particular Possible charity is funded good chunk from Roundtree Foundation, a major lefty charity. And another one, I can't remember the name exactly, but anyway, it was funded by Al Gore. So we know the same people are funding the little people on the ground who eat the crumbs and just war for them, really.
Hey guys, Marco, Richard, do you think Al Gore has stopped taking private flights? Do you think he's not flying that private jet anymore?
That's likely.
I mean, you don't get any miles or status with a private jet, so maybe that's why they're coming after us.
Okay, I see. Go ahead.
Okay, at least they're so concrete bound, because zooming in on these ridiculous things, like frequent flyers, and next time, I don't know, they'll files. It's just super concrete.
They're not concrete bound. They just know that the way to get rid of everything is bit by bit, because people will not accept if you get rid of everything at once. So when plastic straws, we were talking about this a few days ago, like plastic straws became the enemy in the UK overnight. They were everywhere. The default, if you went to a restaurant, was a plastic straw, and it took months. This was before they were banned. It took months before they were completely gone from everywhere, and people were proudly.
But I mean, just imagine the kind of person you have to be to just go after these plastic bags and, I don't know, frequent flyers. It's like, what motivates you? And I think we know.
The cute green sea turtles. Go ahead, Marco. And
in the article, they're talking about the most polluting seats in the plane. It's like, really? Why? Are there seats that fly in a more environmental way within the same airplane? It's just idiotic.
And as usual, it's driven by envy and a desire for equality. It's wanting to drag the rich down, essentially. They don't want people to have private lounges where they can avoid the hoi polloi. They want everybody to be herded into the same smelly pen. And everybody somebody at the front can't have champagne and legroom. Everybody should have no legroom. That seems to be the aim here. I mean, it's ridiculous, and the hypocrisy is rife. But it's an anti-choice agenda. It wants to make everybody the same and have a one-size-fits-all, just like the state has a one-size-fits-all for healthcare.
Well, Atlas's legs are trembling, and I think it's time for him to shrug. I don't think I'll get any disagreement from this panel. Razi, did I interrupt you? You look like you wanted to say something.
I mean, so I've never looked into why business class and first class seats are more polluting. I'm guessing that they just take up more of the plane, and I'm sure there's some explanation. Like if you want to be against something, and that's what's important, you'll find what's wrong with it. I mean, I know the taxes on those seats in the UK, I don't know if this is worldwide, are much higher than they are on economy seats. So I'm guessing this is due to environmentalist reasons. I'm not sure, but yeah, we spoke a few weeks ago on the show about this report by, what was the organization's name? Better Transport or something like that, who were arguing against short haul flights. And I was particularly upset with the example of London to Edinburgh, a trip that I take frequently, where they actually lied and gave clearly. Well, I'll repeat it. It was something like 4 hours and 20 minutes that they gave for London to Edinburgh by train, and 4 hours and 45 minutes by plane. Now, the train time is the fastest train time of just the train journey from when it leaves King's Cross and when it arrives in Edinburgh Waverley. Whereas for flights, they gave you the time it takes to get to the airport. They gave you 2 hours arriving at the airport, 2 hours before the flight, which of course you never need to do on a domestic flight, certainly not from Heathrow. And and then getting into the city center. So they're much like with this, the agenda sets the facts that they end up presenting.
Well, now I am thoroughly depressed about pretty much everything. Marco, Richard, can you cheer me up?
Well, it's not going to be easy. Well, I think the phrase you used, Mark, was eco-status, and that they just always, whatever they do or they say, they just reveal themselves for what they are. It's not much fun to say, but hey,
And sitting back in the cheap seats, I quite like the fact that they're subsidized by people who choose to pay more further up the plane beyond the curtain. I mean, that if you got rid of all those seats and made everyone identical, the price for everyone would go up, and nobody would be in favor of that, even those that fly infrequently. So.
Except some of us sit at the front of the plane because we have miles that pay for it rather than cash. Some of us can't afford those
You have
seats.
to pay the tax for the NHS. So
Yes,
I do find it ridiculous that people do seem to do some of the Hawaii trips that you're talking about, but people have the right to be ridiculous. The same way they've got a right to, chuck a bucket of ice cold water over their head for charity. I don't want that banned either. But it seems a bit mad to me. But each to their own.
I've never done
I'd
the
love to go to
Hawaii trip.
Hawaii.
I've done shorter trips, although I'm telling you, like the benefit, if somebody flies frequently, if you fly every week, the difference between going through security in 3 minutes every single time and not knowing what the line is going to be, the difference between staying in a lounge, getting to pick your own seat. People do this for a reason. I think it's worth it for people who fly a lot, and of course it's people, like you said, people decide for themselves whether or not it makes their lives better, and if something makes their lives better, there will be an environmental.
Well, how dare you? How dare you want to be comfortable and happy? Whatever. It's not popular, so stop. All right, folks, we have to start wrapping things up here. I wanted to announce an upcoming show at 9 p.m. UK time, HBTV with Harry Binswanger, and special guest Jean Maroney on managing your own motivation. That sounds like a great show. There's great content on this show, folks. So like and subscribe and tune in every single day to the Daily Objective, to the reality show, to HBTV. Watch all these extremely interesting and articulate hosts kick the crap out of popular culture, but not just kick the crap out of it, offer an alternative, the alternative of objectivism, a positive, life-affirming, practical philosophy that anybody can check out. So please read Atlas Shrugged, read The Fountainhead, get out there and do your part, folks, to take command of your life. Don't give it over to these people. We've seen in these examples how awful they are. You are the captain of your own destinies. Don't forget that. Any final words, folks? Any parting words? Somebody encourage me, because I have to go do jiu-jitsu right now, feeling depressed.
Hey, I enjoyed being here. So thanks
Okay.
for having me. And it was fun to talk about these, even though the topic was depressing, it's fun to engage with people who can see the world in very similar ways.
Indeed, it is.
Yeah, and if this show is every weekday, we have 15 plus topics a week. We'll try to find at least one positive one a week. I can't promise more than that, because that would be delusional. But yeah, let's give it a
would
shot.
be enough just not to have only videos of riots and stuff like that. I don't know why.
I don't know. Our correspondents happen to always be there when that kind of stuff happens. But yeah, if people want to send us footage of more pleasant things, not too pleasant, but something we can share on the channel, then please do. And yeah, even when we talk about negative things, I think we present a positive alternative. So
Yes, I think for me, I'll just have to say that the fact that objectivism exists, that it's there, it's an island of reason in the sea of chaos. Folks, swim to it, sit on it, break out that book, and always remember to check your premises. Peace.